"You're just doing it for attention." My brother laughed as I struggled to stay conscious. My mom rolled her eyes and told me to stop acting. But when the EMT checked my pulse, his face went pale, and suddenly everyone in the room started screaming. "Hey Reddit, I've been lurking for years, but never thought I'd actually post something. I'm more of the read stories, chuckle, then go back to my day kind of guy. But today I'm writing this because I need to get it off my chest. Maybe someone out there will understand, maybe not. But here goes. My name's Evan. I'm 17, and until about 6 months ago, I thought my family was just quirky. You know, the kind of sarcasm is our love language, family where everything is a joke and no one ever says, "I'm proud of you," unless it's laced in sarcasm. But now I see it clearer. It's not quirky. It's not funny. It's toxic. And the worst part? I didn't even notice how bad it was until I almost died, literally, in front of them. And they laughed. Let me backtrack a little, because none of this is going to make sense unless you understand the dynamic. I'm the middle kid, sandwiched between my older brother Lucas, who's 19 and practically worshipped by my mom, and my younger sister Qley, who's 11 and still kind of oblivious to how messed up our family is. Dad left when I was 6. Never really came back, not even a birthday card. So it's always just been us four: Mom, Lucas, Qley, and me. And for as long as I can remember, I've been the dramatic one, the emotional one, the too sensitive one. At least, according to them. Lucas is, well, he's the golden child. Tall, athletic, all A's in school. Well, according to Mom, I've seen his report cards, and they're not all that. He can do no wrong. If he forgets to take the trash out, oh, he must be so tired from track practice. If I forget, Evan, how many times do I have to tell you? You're the reason this house is a mess. He teases Qley, and Mom laughs like it's a sitcom. I try to intervene when she's crying, and I get told to stop causing drama. I used to think maybe I was just too sensitive, like they said. Maybe I was dramatic. But looking back now, I think I was just trying to be heard in a house where no one was listening. Now here's the thing about me. I've had health problems. Nothing too crazy, or so I thought. Just weird dizziness, occasional fainting spells, headaches that came out of nowhere. Doctors couldn't figure it out. They did all the basic tests, and everything came back normal. So eventually, Mom decided it was just anxiety. Her exact words were, "You're probably just looking for attention. You know how dramatic you get when things aren't about you." That one stung. Lucas ran with that narrative. Every time I got lightheaded or needed to sit down, he'd do this exaggerated swoon and say, "Oh no, someone get the spotlight for Evan." And Mom would laugh. Qley didn't really get it. Sometimes she'd bring me water or pat my back, and I appreciated that more than she'll ever know. Anyway, let's fast forward to that day. It was the afternoon of my cousin Emily's graduation party. Big deal. My mom's side of the family rented out this huge event space, and everyone was expected to show up looking perfect, smiling wide, and pretending like we were the picture-perfect family. I hadn't been feeling great all week. Dizzy spells had gotten worse, and my heart had been doing this weird fluttery thing that made me feel like I was short of breath even when sitting. I told Mom. She rolled her eyes and said, "You always get sick when there's something fun happening. I'm not playing this game with you today." I tried. I really did. I dressed up, forced a smile, went with them. The event space was crowded, hot, and loud. I could barely hear myself think, and I was starting to feel that familiar fog creep into my head. You know the kind, like someone's turning the brightness down on the world around you. I asked Mom if I could sit down. She shot me a look and said, "Not this again. You're fine." Lucas smirked and muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "Maybe if you faint again, someone will finally ask you to prom." That one hit harder than I expected. I found a quiet corner with some folding chairs and sat, hoping it would pass. But it didn't. It got worse. My vision was going gray at the edges, my fingers were tingling, and it felt like my heart was skipping beats. I stood up to get help, but the room tilted and I crashed into a table. Plates clattered to the floor. Someone gasped. But the worst part? I could still hear them. Lucas laughing. Mom saying, "He does this every time we go somewhere important." I tried to talk, to say something, but I couldn't get the words out. It felt like my mouth wasn't working right. I heard my aunt calling 911. Thank God. A few other family members came over, but Mom just stood there with her arms crossed, looking embarrassed. "Evan," she hissed. "Get up. You're making a scene." That's the last thing I remember before everything went black. Apparently, I was unconscious for less than 2 minutes. But when the EMTs arrived and checked my pulse, one of them shouted something, and suddenly everything exploded into motion. I came to briefly and saw the look on the EMT's face, white as a sheet. His hands were moving fast, calling something in on his radio. I remember Mom screaming. Then Lucas swearing and backing away. Qley crying. Then nothing. I woke up in the hospital, hooked up to machines, oxygen tube in my nose. A nurse told me I was lucky, really lucky. My heart had stopped, just for a few seconds, but long enough that they were prepping to defib me when I started breathing again on my own. They suspected some kind of congenital arrhythmia, something genetic, potentially fatal if undiagnosed. I don't remember much from that night, but I remember the look on my mom's face when she walked into the hospital room. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't fear. It was frustration, like I'd inconvenienced her. "You scared everyone," she said flatly. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" I didn't even respond. I was too tired, too done. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just sad or hurt. I was angry. The thing about being labeled the dramatic one your whole life is that no one ever takes you seriously, even when you're dying. And that changes you. It changed me. But I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even argue. I just watched her with this eerie sense of clarity, like I was finally seeing her for who she really was. I didn't know it yet, but that hospital bed would be the starting point of everything. The slow, meticulous unraveling of the image my family had built for themselves. The mask would come off, and when it did, it would be too late to fix. Because I had a plan. And this time, I wasn't playing the dramatic victim. I was done being ignored. So, I spent 3 days in that hospital room. Not a lot of visitors. My aunt came once, brought me a charger and some snacks from the gift shop. She's one of the few people in our extended family who's always treated me like a human being instead of a nuisance. Qley called from Mom's phone the second day and whispered, "I miss you," before Mom made her hang up. Lucas never showed. Not once. And Mom only came back when the cardiologist called her in for a serious family meeting. The diagnosis was a type of inherited arrhythmia disorder. Nothing you could spot on a routine physical. It required a specific test that, surprise, Mom never agreed to when doctors suggested it years ago. "Too expensive," she said. "They're just trying to scare you into more tests." But now that it had nearly killed me, suddenly the urgency clicked. The cardiologist was clear. "Your son was minutes from dying. If it happens again without intervention, he may not be so lucky. He needs treatment, possibly a device implanted. We're still running tests." Mom folded her arms and leaned back like someone had just accused her of theft. "Is this going to cost a lot?" The doctor blinked. "With insurance, we can manage most of it, but there will be follow-ups, procedures, medication." She cut him off. "Well, that's just great." She didn't ask about recovery time, or risks, or what I'd need going forward. She asked about the money. And then, because she couldn't help herself, she turned to me with this tight smile and said, "Well, at least now we know you weren't faking." The doctor shifted uncomfortably and excused himself. I just lay there in the bed, watching her like she was a stranger. In a way, she was. I'd spent years believing the emotional abuse was just a misunderstanding or miscommunication or a byproduct of stress. But it wasn't. It was who she was, who she chose to be. The next morning, a social worker came in. I hadn't requested one. She introduced herself kindly and explained that someone had flagged concerns about family neglect and medical dismissal. I already knew who it was. The EMT. I remembered the look on his face when he checked my vitals. I remember hearing him mutter, "Where have the parents been?" She asked a lot of questions. I answered truthfully, quietly. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I was just numb. Yes, I'd had these symptoms for years. Yes, my mom told me I was being dramatic. No, I'd never seen a specialist until now. No, I wasn't allowed to stay home from school when I felt faint, unless I had a fever. Yes, my brother made fun of me every time I brought it up. Yes, I'd been made to feel like I was attention-seeking. All the time. The social worker nodded slowly, took notes, and promised she'd follow up. And something changed in that moment. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt like, for once, someone believed me. It was such a weird, foreign feeling, I almost didn't trust it. But it was there. I was discharged 2 days later, with a heart monitor strapped to my chest and a packet of papers in my hand. medication schedule, follow-up appointments, emergency procedures, a form recommending that I avoid high-stress environments, which, ironically, was exactly what I was being sent back into. The ride home was silent. Lucas drove, because Mom needed a break. Qley sat in the back with me, playing with the ends of her braid, occasionally glancing up like she wanted to say something. But she didn't. Not then. Lucas, of course, didn't miss his opportunity. "Man," he muttered, half laughing. "You really committed to the bit this time. Whole hospital stay and everything. Respect." I didn't answer. I stared out the window and clenched the discharge papers so tightly they crinkled in my lap. When we pulled into the driveway, Mom was already inside. She'd gone ahead to get dinner ready. Except there was no dinner. She was on the couch scrolling through her phone with a half-empty glass of wine on the table and the TV turned up loud. No welcome home. No hug. Just a bored glance. And, "Your room's been a mess since you left. Try not to get crumbs everywhere again." I walked past her without saying a word. I went to my room, shut the door, locked it, and for the first time in years, I opened my old laptop and started typing. Not school stuff. Not games. A list. At the top, I wrote, "Ways they've tried to silence me." Underneath it, bullet by bullet, I wrote everything I could remember. Every time Mom told me to stop faking. Every time Lucas mocked me. Every time my symptoms were dismissed or laughed off or punished. I filled 3 pages before I even realized I was crying. And even then, it wasn't sadness. It was release. Like I was finally letting something out that had been rotting in my chest for years. The next few weeks were a blur of routine and resentment. Mom drove me to appointments, but only because they threatened to call Child Protective Services if I missed any. Lucas was annoyed because he had to pick up the slack at home and made sure to let me know it. "Must be nice," he grumbled one afternoon, "getting chauffeured around like a little prince while the rest of us clean up your mess." Qley started avoiding everyone. She'd hide in her room or read on the stairs. She stopped laughing at Lucas's jokes. She stopped talking much at all. And I kept my head down, took my meds, wore my monitor, played the part of the quiet, recovering son. But inside, I was planning, and I wasn't just thinking short-term. This wasn't going to be some dramatic yelling match or a one-time blow-up. No, I was going to dismantle them piece by piece. Quietly, strategically. I'd learned from the best. After all, my family specialized in subtle cruelty. I just had to reverse engineer it. It started small. I emailed the social worker with my full list. Every memory, every incident, everything that had ever happened behind closed doors. I even sent screenshots of text from Lucas and Mom, including one that said, "Don't exaggerate at the doctor again, or I'll lose work hours dealing with it." She replied within the hour, "Thank you. I'm escalating this." Then I started collecting proof. Audio recordings, photos, medical bills, more texts. Qley, bless her heart, started quietly helping me. I didn't ask her to. One day she just slipped a flash drive into my hand and whispered, "I saved the security cam videos from the kitchen, from when you passed out." And just like that, I had a record of them laughing while I collapsed. Of Mom saying, "He's always like this." I uploaded everything. Backed it up 6 different ways. Google Drive, USB, encrypted folder. I wasn't going to risk losing any of it. Then, one day after school, Lucas made a mistake. I was coming down the stairs when I heard him on the phone in the kitchen, talking to someone about college. Bragging, as usual. But then he said something that froze me in place. "Yeah, my mom used Evan's hospital fund for my car down payment. She just told him it went to the hospital bill. He's too dumb to ask." I stood there, one foot hovering mid-step, heart pounding, not from the condition, but from sheer disbelief. He what? The car. His new car. The one Mom proudly co-signed for last month, saying it was part of a graduation gift. I'd assumed she pulled the money out of her savings, but no, she'd used mine. The fund my aunt set up years ago in case of medical emergencies. The one my grandmother left money in specifically for me after she passed. That was the moment it clicked. The real reason they ignored my symptoms for so long wasn't just neglect. It was convenience. It was money. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I turned around, went back up the stairs, opened my laptop, and added another bullet to the list. They stole from me, and I knew exactly how I was going to make them regret it. But first, I needed to be patient, because some revenge needs time to bloom. And mine, it was just starting to grow. I didn't sleep much that night. Not out of fear or stress, but focus. A kind of icy clarity I'd never felt before. Like all the years of gaslighting, mockery, and humiliation had been sharpening me into something hard and exact. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it creaked with every rotation, and thought about that graduation fund. My fund. The one Grandma specifically wrote into her will with my name on it. The same one Mom promised hadn't gained enough interest to be useful yet. Lies. And now Lucas was driving around in a 2017 Dodge Charger, silver, custom rims, stereo system so loud you could hear it from the next neighborhood, paid for, at least partially, with the money meant to save my life. The next morning, I skipped school. I knew Mom wouldn't care. She was always thrilled when I stayed out of the way, especially if she didn't have to drive me anywhere. I told her I felt a little faint again, and she didn't even look up from her tablet. Just mumbled something about staying in my room and not making a mess. Instead, I biked to my aunt's office. She's a paralegal, works for a firm that mostly handles estate planning and wills. When she saw me, her face lit up, but then her smile faded. "Evan, what's wrong? You look pale. Do you need to sit down?" I told her I was fine. Then I told her everything. Not just about the charger. About the years of neglect. The missed doctor visits. The social worker. The hospital. The recordings. All of it. And I showed her the list I'd been compiling. Printed, color-coded, dated. She didn't say a word for a full minute. Just kept flipping pages like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then she sat back in her chair and said, "You need a lawyer." I raised an eyebrow. "That bad?" She nodded slowly. "It's not just bad. It's criminal." She asked me for a copy of everything. Said she'd talk to her boss about connecting me with someone who could help. Someone who specialized in financial guardianship abuse. I hadn't even known that was a thing. But apparently, when someone manages money on behalf of a minor and uses it for personal gain, it's a big deal. Especially if it involves inheritance. On the way home, I couldn't stop thinking about my grandmother. I remembered how she used to tuck me in and rub my back until I fell asleep. How she always brought 2 sets of gifts for birthdays. One big one, and one secret one just for you. I remembered her telling me, quietly and very seriously, "You are not the problem, Evan. Never let them make you believe that." And then I remembered her funeral. Mom cried the loudest. Lucas gave some fake, tearless speech about how Nana always encouraged us to be strong. And I just sat there, silent, numb, not because I didn't care, but because I knew she was the only adult in my life who ever truly saw me. And now, the money she'd set aside for me, meant to protect me, had been funneled into my brother's charger. I wasn't angry. I was beyond angry. The next part took some time. Weeks, actually. I didn't want to tip anyone off. So I played along. Took my meds. Wore the heart monitor. Ate dinner at the table, even when Lucas made snide comments under his breath about hypochondriacs. I smiled. I nodded. I acted like everything was fine. But meanwhile, I was setting dominoes. First, I found the name of the dealership where Lucas got the car. I emailed them, anonymously at first, and asked if they had any records of the down payment source. No response. So I called, pretending to be Mom's assistant. Thank you, AI voice changers and YouTube tutorials. The woman on the other end hesitated at first, but then said, "Oh yes, that vehicle was co-signed by Ms. Danvers. The down payment came from a joint savings account ending in 4087. I knew that number. It was the account Grandma had set up through her estate, the one Aunt Rachel used to talk about when she was managing Grandma's bills toward the end. That account was in my name. A few days later, Aunt Rachel confirmed it. After a little digging, she found the transfer, $6,000 wired directly into a dealership escrow account, authorized by Mom, with her signature, on a minor's account. And that was the nail in the coffin, because it wasn't just neglect anymore. It was fraud. The lawyer Aunt Rachel connected me with, Mr. Collins, was this quiet, older guy with wire-framed glasses and a weirdly calming voice. He didn't ask a lot of questions, just listened, took notes, looked over the printed list. Then, without fanfare, he leaned forward and said, "We're going to file a petition with the court. You're 17, which means you can request early emancipation if you can demonstrate financial abuse." My heart skipped a beat, but not in a bad way this time. I could leave, legally, permanently. No more mocking, no more neglect, no more pretending. He continued, "We'll also request a forensic accountant to look at the fund's history. If your mother misappropriated the money, she could be ordered to pay restitution. Depending on the amount, it could escalate. I asked, to what? He looked me dead in the eye. Felony theft. And depending on how much of the medical neglect we can prove, possibly endangering a minor. That night, I stood outside in the backyard under the old maple tree, the same one I used to climb as a kid before Lucas cut off one of the lower branches by accident. I stared up at the stars and felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope, but also control. I wasn't some helpless, dramatic teenager anymore. I wasn't the weak one. I wasn't the joke. I was the one holding all the receipts. And my family. They were about to learn what happens when you spend years trying to erase someone. They come back sharper, more dangerous, and they remember everything. The court date was scheduled for a Monday morning. My 18th birthday was only 5 months away, but Mr. Collins said it didn't matter. The court had plenty of precedent for granting early emancipation in cases like mine, especially with medical evidence, documentation, and witness statements. That's when I started preparing for the real revenge. Because leaving wasn't enough. They had taken from me time, safety, health, inheritance, dignity, and I was going to make sure the world knew it. I created a second list. This one was called How to Break the Image They Built. Because Mom had spent years making us look perfect to the outside world. Christmas cards, holiday photos, social media posts with captions like #my3blessings. She had everyone fooled. Friends, extended family, even Qley's teachers. But no one had ever seen the cracks. Not yet. And I had just the way to show them. Because trust me, that courtroom? It was not the main event. It was just the opening act. Here's how it ended. Not in one explosion. Not in a single mic drop moment. But in layers. Like stripping wallpaper off a rotting wall and realizing the entire house was decaying underneath the surface. And for the first time, everyone else got to see it too. The courtroom wasn't as big or dramatic as I'd pictured. Just a narrow room with white walls, gray carpeting, and 2 rows of benches in the back. But it felt huge to me, like this was the place where everything might finally tip. The judge was an older woman with thin glasses and a voice like gravel. No nonsense, which worked in my favor. I sat beside Mr. Collins, wearing the only suit I owned, one Grandma bought for me 2 years ago when she took me to her friend's wedding. Mom didn't come. Lucas didn't either. Only Qley, who sat in the back beside Aunt Rachel, hugging her knees and watching everything quietly. It started with the petition for emancipation. Mr. Collins laid out the facts. The inheritance fund created for my medical emergencies, the unauthorized withdrawal by my legal guardian, the misappropriation of those funds for non-essential personal property, i.e., a car for Lucas, and the long-standing medical neglect that nearly resulted in my death. He submitted the printed list. He submitted the text messages. He submitted the audio recordings. He even played the kitchen security footage, the one Qley saved. The room fell silent as the court watched a video of me collapsing next to the sink, my body hitting the tile hard, Lucas laughing in the background, and Mom sighing. He's always like this. I didn't turn around to see their faces. I didn't need to. The judge didn't ask for clarification. She just looked over the papers again, nodded slowly, and said, I'm inclined to approve. But she didn't sign the papers right away. No. First, she ordered an investigation into the misuse of funds, stating that there was substantial evidence of financial abuse and possible criminal misconduct. Then she looked directly at me and asked, Do you feel safe returning home today? I said no. That was it. 2 letters. No theatrics. No tears. She nodded, turned to my aunt, and asked if she was willing to house me temporarily until the case was resolved. Aunt Rachel said yes before the judge even finished her sentence. Qley squeezed her hand. That night, I packed a duffel bag with clothes and left the house that had raised me. No one stopped me. Mom wasn't even there. Lucas was at the gym. Qley stood at the door, holding her favorite stuffed animal. She pressed it into my hands. Just for now, she whispered. So you don't forget me. My chest nearly cracked open, but I kept it together. I hugged her, promised I'd call every day, and left. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and paperwork. The forensic accountant combed through every bank statement linked to my inheritance. Turns out, the charger was just the beginning. There were receipts for luxury skincare, spa weekends, electronics for Lucas, even a Vegas trip Mom went on with her new boyfriend. charged directly to the estate account she'd sworn was empty. The total amount misappropriated? Over $27,000. Mr. Collins filed charges on my behalf. It went from a civil matter to a criminal one almost overnight. Fraud, misuse of fiduciary duty, grand theft. The words sounded strange when I first heard them, like something out of a courtroom drama, not my life. But they were real, and the DA took it seriously. Very seriously. Mom was served papers at her work. Apparently, she had a meltdown. Threw a chair. Got escorted out by security. Lucas posted a story on Instagram about snakes in the family, probably thinking it was a clever dig at me, but all it did was direct even more attention to the case. Because once the story broke, once local media picked up on the neglected teen nearly dies due to medical condition ignored by family, people started asking questions. Neighbors stopped waving at her. Her church friends stopped returning calls. Even Qley's school counselor requested a meeting with the principal to discuss concerning home dynamics. It was like watching a glass vase fall in slow motion, everyone pretending they didn't see the cracks until it was already shattered on the floor. The criminal case dragged on for 3 months. Mom pled not guilty at first, claimed I was exaggerating, that I manipulated the footage and twisted the story to get attention. But then the accountant testified, and the EMT, and the social worker, and my aunt, and eventually, even Qley, in a closed-door session with a child advocate. That was the tipping point, because Qley had nothing to gain. No money, no legal benefit, just the truth. And she told it. Every quiet, painful moment she remembered. The times she saw me collapse. The way Mom made fun of me when I needed help. The way Lucas would push me and laugh, and Mom would say I needed to man up. It all came out. Mom was offered a plea deal, 2 years of probation, mandatory restitution of all stolen funds, and a 6-month parenting course, provided she gave up full custody of both me and Qley. She signed it. Didn't even fight it. Lucas didn't show up to the final hearing, but I saw him a week later at a gas station, of all places. He was pumping gas into his precious Charger, sunglasses on, music blaring. He saw me and smirked like none of it mattered, like I hadn't burned the whole rotten tree to the ground. So I walked up to him and said the only thing I'd been holding in. Enjoy the car. He rolled his eyes. Yeah, thanks. I will. Good, I said, stepping back. Because it's yours now. Mom's credit score is destroyed, the insurance is in default, and when the court seizes the assets she bought with stolen money next week, that car's the first to go. His face dropped. I told them everything. I added. Which receipts were for you? Which text you sent? Everything. You knew. You helped. And they know it. I walked away before he could answer. And I didn't look back. These days, I live with Aunt Rachel full-time. The judge granted me emancipation, but I chose to stay until I graduate. I've got my own room, a therapist, and, get this, a scholarship. Apparently, a nonprofit that supports medically neglected teens saw my story and reached out. They're covering my first 2 years of college. Qley lives with us now, too. That took some fighting. Mom tried to contest the custody arrangement, but the judge wasn't having it. Said, you already gambled away one child's safety. We're not risking another. Qley's doing better. She smiles more. Draws a lot. Talks about becoming a child advocate one day. And me? I'm healing. Slowly. Steadily. I still have the list, the original one. Ways they've tried to silence me. But I've added one final bullet point at the bottom, underlined twice. They didn't. They tried. Oh, they tried. But I got out. I got justice. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel invisible anymore.